Good evening, and welcome to the Galloway Township Board of Education meeting on the 16th of March, 2015. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Avery?
Here.
Mr. Carmen?
Here.
Mrs. Cordero?
Here.
Mr. Days? Here. Mrs. Evanson?
Here.
Mr. Greb?
Here.
Mr. Noor? Mr. Huggard?
Here.
And Mr. Engel.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and lay the light of bread? Thank you. In accordance with Code Law 231, notice of this meeting was provided to the press and parent in the Galloway Township Municipal Building on the 5th of March 2015. We have no minutes this evening, so let's go right to finance and school operations, please.
Thank you, President Hubbard. Mr. Kelly and I do have a presentation before we move on to any resolution.
Thank you.
With your pleasure, we will begin. Good evening, everyone, to our board members as well as members of our administration and staff and members of the public certainly as well. Those of you who have been at board meetings know that this is not the first presentation we have done in regard to the 2015-2016 budget. This is the presentation that puts forth a preliminary budget that a resolution needs to be passed this evening to submit this budget to the county office. I will emphasize, and I know you'll hear Mr. Kelly say this as well, this is not the final budget. This budget is not finalized until the April 27th official public hearing. In this evening's presentation, you will see some slides that, if you've been here before, are similar. You will also see some new information. And tonight's presentation is based on feedback that we have received from the Board of Education, from the public, and from the work we have certainly done with our administrative team. Use this slide when we did a presentation on Dr. Seuss's birthday, and we thought it really is a great depiction of what we are trying to do with the 2015-2016 budget. And like most years, but particularly in looking ahead next year, it is a balancing act. And part of that balancing act, you see books and things on one side, you see rakes and milk on another side. That balance between instructional and non-instructional priorities in the budget. In addition to that, one of the balances we are working on is the needs of our students and school and district, the needs that align with our district goals and philosophy, as well as certainly with our understanding of the community and the economic climate of the community and the economic condition of the community. So we are trying to balance all of those things to make sure we are meeting the needs of our students, of our staff members who serve and work for our students every day, as well as the public in general. As a quick reminder, our board does have multi-year district goals, and we are in the first year, 14-15, of 3-year district goals. And I am certainly not going to read all of these to you, but I do want to do some highlights. We have 4 major goals. The first goal is about providing a safe and healthy environment. And so when you see the slides about the proposed budget, you will see items that we hope to keep in the budget that are related to that safe, healthy environment. There are also some items, based on the feedback we have received to date, that we've had to cut temporarily from the budget, or maybe never got into the budget that relate to this area. And when we think about safety and a healthy environment, it both comes from the programmatic angle as well as from the facilities angle. And this is available on our website. The second major goal focuses on learning, the main reason we are here. And it looks at both student achievement, but also the instructional practices that teachers utilize to help achieve and work with their students. So there are student learning goals in certain content areas, as well as overall narrowing of the achievement gap. As I think everyone knows, or if you don't, we have a very diverse student population. And that diversity is in everything from socioeconomic status to culture, ethnicity, more suburban parts of the township, more rural parts, children who are from families that have lived here their whole lives, and children from families that have moved here more recently, even from other countries. With that, professional development. Very often schools are encouraged to follow business models. Well, in businesses, research and development, part of which is learning and professional development, is an important part. That is certainly true of a school district, whether it is newer things like the adoption of the Common Core, ongoing increases or changes in technology, looking at what kind of practices support our new teachers, understanding how to address students who are from impoverished homes, and certainly things like meeting the requirements of Achieve New Jersey, the teacher evaluation model. The third major area focuses totally on infrastructure and equipment so that we can both be effective and efficient in our operations. And some of these things are already completed. For example, the Roland and Smithville roof replacements. Some of these things we hope to maintain in the budget. Certainly the fire alarms at 4 of our schools are a major priority. In addition to that, we need to maintain our technology infrastructure. Again, you are going to see some things on the upcoming slides that continue to support these district goals, and some things that are at risk, at least for 15-16. And then the last goal tends not to be one that is as much related to the budget, but certainly discussion about the budget has brought out more participation from the citizenship. We do have an active advisory committee that Mr. Kelly and I meet with regularly. We did one major survey this year. The results will actually be shared publicly at the next board meeting, and we certainly continue to increase student achievement, community involvement, connected to student achievement, or just in general for people to have a better understanding of our schools. So again, I ask you to keep in mind that these district goals do exist and were formally adopted by the board as we work our way through the remainder of the presentation. With that, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Kelly. I'll be back.
Thank you. Just an update as far as where we are tonight and what still needs to be done. Obviously, as we previously stated, we've had presentations at 3 of our previous board meetings, some as early as January. We'll take public comment afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is the protocol.
There will be public comment questions after the presentation.
Thank you.
Again, presented at 3 public meetings. We began our reorganization in January and held 2 additional public presentations at our board meeting. We also discussed the budget at our board retreat in January. Obviously, we received the 15-16 state aid figures, which are flat. We've held a number of committee meetings and administrative meetings, and we've identified, as you'll see on the upcoming slides, a number of reductions that need to occur in order to balance the upcoming budget. So what do we need to do? Obviously, we're going to provide some detail of our budget tonight. We're going to respond to board and public feedback. And our biggest item that we have to accomplish tonight is to set the total dollars for submission to the New Jersey Department of Education. The initial budget is submitted to the county. The deadline is Friday. At that point, it's reviewed by the Executive County School Business Administrator and Executive County Superintendent. Dr. Giaquinto and I normally meet with the county office, and they have a number of questions or concerns that they have with the budget. We answer any of those, and then move forward for our public hearing. Public hearing will be held at our regular board meeting on April 27th. It'll be a Monday evening, right here in the middle school gymnasium. So a brief review. Current enrollment in the district is flat. It's down 2 students from September. So it's about 0.06%. So essentially student enrollment is flat in the district from September through February. Out-of-district placements, however, is up 12% as far as students that we pay to send to a special placement. They might have special needs in their IEP or other need. There was a question from the public at a previous meeting, so I'll just reiterate. The number of students that are sent out of district, out of about 3,300 students, is 47. So there's 47 students total sent out of the district currently, and that represents about 1% of the student population in district. The initial budget, when we ran the numbers, initial revenues were actually down 1.3%, and expenditures, not what we're presenting tonight, but the initial run of expenditures was up just over 5%. So that gave us a budget gap to close of about $3.2 million. Just for everyone's information, if you're new, or to remind you, the 2% tax levy cap, as far as the amount the board is allowed to increase the tax levy under the current law, is $609,000. The board also has available to it bank cap from 2013 in the amount of $429,000. This represents the legal authority that the board had to increase the tax levy but chose not to. Bank cap is available for 3 years if it's not utilized by the board, and then after 3 years it sunsets. So since this is from 2013, if it's not utilized by the board in the upcoming budget 15-16, it will sunset and no longer be available to use. And obviously, as we said, administration is met with proposed adjustments based on the input that we've received at our various meetings. Historical perspective, just to take a look at our 2 main revenue sources, we're about 47% state aid and 50% local tax levy. And the remainder is some small federal revenue numbers for SEMI, which is Medicaid revenue, and then miscellaneous income. If you look at state aid from 8-9 all the way to 15-16, you see a straight line here. It's still actually down from 8-9 all the way to 15-16. If you do the math on average, it's down about 0.5% per year. If you just take current year versus the beginning 8-9 and do the math. Conversely, if you look at the tax levy here, over the years you see relatively flat with some increases. That is up an average of 1.4% per year from the 8-9 fiscal year up into the 15-16 fiscal year. So just to point out, I know we talk about the 2% cap, however, the local tax levy has actually grown less than that over the past 8 years that we show on the screen.
Mr. Kelly, we'll be back with more numbers. Some of the next few slides have been presented before, but we just want to quickly go over them, just to tell you the quick code. These are programs and services for students and in working with certificated staff. And if you see green, we are trying in this budget to maintain it. If you see yellow, it is maybe not totally cut, but significantly scaled back. If you see it underlined in red, right now, every dollar related to that item or items is totally removed from the budget. So this particular slide talks about instructionally related things, and we're going to be going through these things in more detail in a few moments. This slide looks at the non-instructional side. You look at that quick glance, you can see there's a lot of red on the screen, which means a lot of the ongoing facilities and maintenance kinds of things, a lot of the ongoing technology kinds of things that are done on a rotation to maintain our schools, some of which are getting old, have that red line. You will notice green, district goal, high level of school safety and security. We do have a ROD grant and do plan over the next 2 years to replace 2 fire alarms in 2 of the schools and then the other 2. We are also pleased that at this point, the budget continues to maintain the part-time school resource officer position. The next set of slides take that coded yellow, green, red, and break it down by district and then by each school. So the items on this slide are things that are either being cut that are listed in the district budget. It may be something for the students at a school, but they are things that are either being cut district-wide or the line item is in the district level of the budget. We have had one nurse that traveled from school to school in addition to the existing nurses. We have a nurse retirement, and so one of the reductions is to not have that nurse. Some of you know at the last board meeting we did increase the substitute nursing daily rate to help address this potential cut. I talked before about how important professional development is. We have taken every dollar out of the local budget for professional development and are hoping to fund some of it through Title IIA, which is federal money. By mandate, our schools have to have what is called intervention and referral services, staff members who have expertise in ideas to assist students struggling academically, behaviorally. We are looking to reduce the number of those positions. We also have team leaders at the schools who help extensively with planning, with overseeing things, attending special activities. Again, not an elimination, but reducing the number of these positions at every school. I mentioned before that technology, and if you look at this section right in here, we are using technology in our schools. We're very proud on a daily basis. For example, 5 iPads in every primary grade classroom, shared carts of Chromebooks or laptops in the upper grades. And, you know, some people may see that as an extra. It is the year 2015. It is certainly not an extra for our children and the way that they learn. In addition to that, you may have heard of something called PARC, and we are in the middle of PARC testing right now. And I will tell you, the schedule for how we could administer PARC was dictated in great part by the number of technological devices we have available. And in terms of the laptop carts or the Chromebooks, we've had to do sharing where the carts from the middle school had to be sent for the elementary schools for 6th grade, and then the 6th grade ones had to be sent to the middle school to help us accomplish that. These projectors exist in some of our classrooms and are no longer functional, and we're looking to do a newer, more efficient version of those. In terms of the desktop and monitor replacements, these are our general workstations for each teacher, as well as a certain number in the classroom depending on the grade level. Those of you who've been around Galloway a long time know that we've had a rotation for this for, I'm going to say, at least 15 years. And this would take us out of that rotation. Projectors in our elementary schools in some cases don't work. The ceiling mounted ones, we try to use the rolling ones, which work better in some settings than others. These last few items are related to special education. We did do, for all of these items, a detailed historical review of expenditures. And although it is better to leave some wiggle room because you never know what students are going to move into the district that need services, we are trying to cut across a variety of different areas out of fairness, if you will. On the non-instructional side, again, I will mention things that have been on an ongoing rotation schedule, such as the carpet replacement, such as adding cameras to buses. That's a safety feature. Maintenance and custodial equipment. So on this side, you see some things that are ongoing things every year on the budget that will either be reduced or eliminated. You also see some things that we felt we could adjust. For example, a new copier contract was negotiated this past year and has shown us a savings. So that's something that Mr. Kelly felt comfortable making a reduction. Jump in, Mr. Kelly, please.
One item, removal of playgrounds at our non-school location properties of Oceanville, Cologne, and South Bag Harbor. Obviously, those schools, 2 of which were raised, one of which is being used as the district facilities office, We've maintained playgrounds at those facilities over the last number of years and kept them up and maintained them. Unfortunately, there's some new ADA requirements that are coming out that will require us to install new handicap ramps at all of the playgrounds that we maintain in the district, as well as additional mulch to maintain a safe environment. Unfortunately, the added cost of including the ADA compliant handicap ramps, the plastic bumpers that will need to go around the playgrounds, and the like, forced us, unfortunately, to make the decision that we will remove these playgrounds. Number one, because we don't want them to become a safety hazard, and number two, because we just can't afford to maintain them at this time, since there are not schools at those locations.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And I'll just quickly add, we kept them at those locations because children in those communities live further away from Imagination Station. But unfortunately, this is an example in tighter budget times, we have to prioritize. At the school level, you will see a similar list for each of the schools, and you will notice reductions of positions. And whenever we see this, we know sometimes it creates panic. How big will class size get? Will people lose jobs? These reductions are based both on a review of enrollment and the number of homerooms needed to have reasonable class size, and again, not student-teacher ratio, class size, the number of children in a particular class with their teacher. And you can see there are reductions at both of these schools. You also see reductions in supply accounts. And then some things are unique to a school. It was the turn for Arthur Brand to have rewiring done for the network. Right now, that is on the cut list. And, Arthur Brand, among the 4 elementary schools, is the oldest. And so obviously, just like as your home ages or as we age, things need to be replaced. And you can see the list of things that are removed from the budget in terms of replacement. Reed's Road School is the second oldest of the 4 large elementary schools. Again, you see teaching positions reduced, supplies reduced, and again, you see reduction in or elimination of facilities-related things. For anyone who does parent pickup at the end of the day at Reed's Road, I'm sure that one catches your eye, as we really do use that road and certainly believe we should try to keep that and maintain it in the budget. Moving on to Rowan and Smithville, relatively speaking, although they are both more than 20 years old, these are the 2 newer compared to the other 2. Again, you see the similar things: positions, instructional supplies, that ongoing. You see carpet replacement. Again, something we try to do, so many classrooms every year. And I should add that we replaced original carpet or much older carpet with carpet tile squares that is antimicrobial, that helps us maintain good air quality in the classroom, and also if something happens, something gets stained for whatever reason, you don't have to pick up the whole carpet. You can just replace that single carpet tile. Then you see some things that might be particular to a school. Roland, again, some asphalt repairs. Smithville, because of the location and setting of the school, looking for some additional fencing for safety purposes. Right here at the middle school, which actually had its 15th birthday this year, again, reduction of teachers, instructional supplies, stair treads. One of the things that, with the fact that children go up and down multiple times during the day, replacing that stair tread. While the GTMS gym is absolutely beautiful, I encourage you not to look up, because that ceiling is 15 years old and is experiencing difficulty with the painting. Then the custodial equipment. Our preschool at Pomona is in a unique situation. We are looking at reductions there as well from the local budget. However, we are one of 19 districts in the state that applied for a preschool expansion grant. And we are actually working on that plan at the current time, and I will be making a presentation about that next week. We believe that we can transfer some of the expenses from the proposed budget for next year into the grant, including a portion of the principal's salary allocated to the grant. And Mr. Kelly and I reached out to the Department of Ed to find out if that was an acceptable use of the grant funds. For someone who would say, well, cover every cost of Pomona preschool in the grant, A, there's not enough money in the grant, but B, many of the children at Pomona are special education, and this particular grant is for economically disadvantaged general education 4-year-old students. Again, more to come about that next week. I mentioned class size. We believe that this is very important to the instruction. If you know anything about the Danielson framework, you know that it is a tool that is research-based that helps define what effective teaching looks like. What does teaching look like that will increase student achievement? Part of it is the level to which teachers know individual students. Part of it is about that classroom environment, respect, rapport, how you manage the classroom, how you use the physical space. Of course, part of it is about the instructional practices themselves. So in general, we try to keep class size on average lower at the lower grades, and we'll let it go higher. You may look at this and wonder why a higher grade is a little lower than maybe a middle grade. And based on the number of children and the number of homerooms, if we took away, say, another homeroom in each of the 4th grades, that 21 would become a 27 or a 28 or a 29, depending upon the school. We believe that that is not acceptable in terms of the learning environment and, in all candor, the rigor of the standards that exist in the year 2015. So we feel this class size can be maintained. I already mentioned reductions of positions. I should mention that we do have retirees, so it does not mean that that many people will be losing a job. I should also add, I've heard folks say, well, the school district is not an employment agency. We need to be fiscally responsible. And that is true. But I also need to mention that if we unemploy people, if we reduce people, that just puts more people into this area that are on unemployment, that don't have a job, that are not contributing to the economy. So folks need to remember that the school district, yes, it does cost tax dollars, but it is also a contributor to the well-being of the community. And I'm going to go back to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. So just a brief summary of the budget after reductions. Obviously, the majority of our budget, because we are in the people business, is driven by salaries and employee health benefits. So just at the top of the screen, just overall across the district, you see a little more than a 0.5% increase in total salaries from the current budget year moving forward. Secondly, for benefits, you see an increase of about 1.5%. I will remind everyone who has been here and the members of the public who may be here for the first time, both the GTEA, the teachers group, and the GTPSA, the supervisors, are at an increasing level of health insurance contributions through their contract. There's a 4-year phase-in through Chapter 78 where public employees contribute an increasing percentage of their health insurance over the 4 years. So for the upcoming year, the teachers group will be in year 3, principals will be in year 2. What does that mean? This increase of just under $200,000, this coming year we will take in approximately $1.4 million in health insurance contributions from our employees, and those directly offset the increase in health benefit costs that we're looking at. Based on the preliminary meetings we've had with our health insurance brokers, we're looking at a renewal of about 15% or so on the health insurance side. So you can see the direct effect of those health insurance increasing contributions. Instead of 15%, we're looking at a little more than 1.5%. Just total costs, if you look at the general areas where we spend our money, you'll see we talked about out-of-district tuition and the increase in students. Out-of-district tuition next year will go up about $400,000, or a little more than 18%. Twofold. Number one, as I said, we have an increasing number of out-of-district students this year. And then number two, in the current year, we actually had additional IDEA money that was used to offset the tuition costs that we incurred in the district. Because of the change in fiscal year of the federal IDEA grant, we have additional monies available this year to help offset those costs. Support services, which is anything from the nurse to the attendance office to the guidance and child study team, a decrease of about $185,000. Administration, an increase of 0.4% or $14,000. This is mostly attributable to software fees that we have to pay for the Teach New Jersey legislation for the new teacher evaluation model. Facilities, a decrease of a little under 2%. Transportation, an increase. This is mainly related, again, going back to the out-of-district tuition. When we have those out-of-district placements, we have to transport the students. Overall general education, in-class resource, as well as our basic skills and English as a second language programs, we're looking at a decrease of a little over 0.5% or $132,000, and then self-contained special ed increase of about 1.3%. So as you can see, for the majority of the categories, we're seeing relatively flat budgets, minus 2%, plus 3%, the exception being our out-of-district tuition, where we're seeing a high increase in our costs. We talked about that, just over 1% of students. We actually strive to maintain students in district and really do, and Dr. J. Quinton and I have both said, a relatively good job of keeping students in district when we can. Unfortunately, sometimes we run out of options and have to place a student where they should be so they can have the best learning experience. A summary of budget after the reduction. So if we take a look at the proposed budget versus this past year, you see the actual total budget's down about 2.2% or $1.3 million. I will mind, this includes capital expenditures. So if we back out capital expenditures, we put on 2 roofs this past year. Those are one-time costs and can kind of skew a comparison. So if we take out capital costs, which is the second line here, you see the budget relatively flat, down $41,000. And I will note that that's less than what we budgeted in 14-15, as well as what we budgeted in the 13-14 school year. So the upcoming budget for operational expenditures, non-capital, down $41,000 over the prior year and down also the year before that. The budget efficiencies matrix, for those of you who are regular attending our meetings, you've seen this many times before. So, go back here. Dr. Giaquinto and I meet mid-year every year at the executive, at the county office where they review our budget efficiencies. The state looks at 7 specific ratios to determine whether or not they feel you're spending money efficiently. I'm happy to report in all 7 of those categories, we have a positive variance, which means we're doing better than the state average. On the left side, if you're less than the state average, that's a favorable rating. So we spend less per student on support services, much less per student on administrative costs, less on legal services and plant maintenance, The next is staff ratios. So we have our staff servicing 1 student more than the average for educational support services. Our administrators on average service 50.7 students more than the average in the state, as well as administrative personnel to faculty, serving 6.3 faculty members more than the state average. And again, from a number of years ago, there were cuts. Just a reminder of some of the cuts that happened before that still do not exist in the district. So the details, where does this boil down to? We have a total general fund budget of $59.7 million. The amount to be, I see misspelling there, I apologize. The amount to be raised by taxes of $30,600. That's what happens when us accountants use Excel. And then the amount to be raised by taxes for debt service. You see, this represents an increase of 0.5% on the tax levy. When we calculate the tax rate, we look at the tax rate for the calendar year. So we are on what's called the split year tax levy. This is where Darryl asked the question last meeting. When we calculate the tax rate, we take half of this budget and half of this budget to figure out what the tax rate is in the calendar year. So when we talk about the tax rate, which you see here, an increase overall of about 2.4 cents, that's a combination of the current year budget and this year budget, because we look at everything in the calendar year. If we were looking at it purely on a fiscal year, this budget would go up about half a cent. But because we look at half of the prior year budget, half of this budget, that comes into play to calculate these tax rates. We're looking at a rate of $1.12, almost $1.13 on the general, and 3.2 cents on the debt service. So again, for a home assessed at $100,000, this shows an increase of about $24 per year. And again, that's on the calendar year. So if we're just looking at this budget that we're talking about tonight, that same home that's valued at $100,000, the actual effect of this budget on that home is $5 per year. And then just a reminder, you'll see what a penny equals on the tax rate. Obviously, you see the huge drop between 1314 and 1415, and that's a direct result of the decrease in the net valuation taxable, which resulted from the revaluation that occurred in the township. Finally, on this slide, I'd just like to point out the surplus that's used in the budget. Every year we utilize surplus. We are required to budget what's known as excess surplus. The state and our auditors do a calculation of any fund balance that we have over 2% of our annual general fund expenditures. We're required to include that in the upcoming budget as tax relief. You'll see this number continues to decrease. This is part of the reason why we had a decrease in revenues. This amount of dollars is actually included as a revenue, but because it's decreasing, it's becoming increasingly tighter to complete our budgets. So I just wanted to point out that decrease in surplus overall over the past 3 or 4 years. What does this mean? Overall, we talked about the reductions by school. We're looking at a reduction of about 12 individuals, FTEs, full-time equivalents. We're still looking to support what we think is a reasonable and positive class size. We're maintaining most district programs. We have scaled back or eliminated some minor programs in the district or programs that don't serve a large number of students. We're continuing our relationship and shared service with the Township of Galloway, which has worked out tremendously for a part-time school resource officer in the district. And we're going to delay some ongoing replacement and maintenance cycles, be it for facilities and maintenance, technology, and the like. And then we're going to, as we said, pursue capital projects for necessary safety upgrades. Just to review, 0.5% increase in the local tax levy based on this budget that we're talking about here. We talked about bank cap in the beginning of the presentation. That expires and goes away. So the board's ability to utilize or increase the tax levy by that amount, that $429,000, sunsets, and they cannot use that at any point in the future. The calendar year, because we calculate taxes on a calendar year tax levy, we're looking at about a $24 increase on a $100,000 home, or 2.4 cents. Again, I just want to stress, this budget that we presented, if we're looking at it over the fiscal year, which will be raised partly in 2015 and partly in 2016, this budget, that $100,000 home, there will be a $5 increase in taxes on that home.
Before I go over the next steps, just a few general comments. As Mr. Kelly just indicated, this budget that we just reviewed and are asking the board to discuss tonight is a 0.5% increase. Despite the fact that by law, the board can increase the budget up to the 2% tax levy cap and use the bank cap, we are presenting it at this level based on feedback we have previously received from the board, although Mr. Kelly and I know that there may be different opinions between and among board members. And I really need to say that the original budget entries by members of our administrative team, whether it was input from staff, looking at district goals, looking at their building needs, was a fair and reasonable budget. And so I don't want anyone to think that there was pie in the sky or wish list or anything like that in the first run of this budget. But we realize that we are in a challenging economy and have taken input from our board who I know has listened to people who have spoken at public meetings to put this budget forth. There are things, and I tried to emphasize this, that are on the cut list that we are concerned about. And we are concerned about that decreasing fund balance for future years. So, tonight, as soon as Tim and I sit down, the Board of Education will obviously give input, ask questions. It will be opened to public comment or questions. And then hopefully there will be a resolution passed so that Mr. Kelly and I can do some work, because it's numbers, Mr. Kelly more so than myself, because this preliminary budget needs to be in the county office by Friday. There is then that period of time for further review, and as previously mentioned, that final budget hearing on April 27th. So with that said, we will shut the presentation off, or at least shut the projector off, just in case we need to bring something up if someone has a question, and turn it back over to our board president, Mr. Hubbard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Giaquinto and Mr. Kelly for that presentation this evening. There you go. I guess the first thing is that, as the public's seen, the board is proposing a 0.5% increase tonight to vote on that we'll submit to the county. And in that, we're very comfortable at this point to submit that to the county. That won't be that may or may not be the final number that they will vote on in April. But however, at this venture, I think the board needs to have a very candid discussion on where we are and the cuts that are on the table and how we live with those cuts for the next fiscal year that we're facing. I understand about the fund balance and the amount that we have to carry forward every year to help us pay for these things. And we have been eating at that every year since 2011 and even before that. However, it's still the taxpayers' money in my mind, and that we're just using our own money to pay for some of these things. But with that all being said, I know we're postponing projects that we promised ourselves years ago that we wouldn't do that. However, these are tough times, and what I believe is that we need to go with the bare essentials and fund what we have to fund. I saw that there's 12 positions that we're not going to need next year, and some of them are going to be reduced because of retirements, and that's fine, and some may not be, and we won't know that until the end of the year. So some of the things that I'm very disappointed that we can't do, obviously a lot of the maintenance things that we promised that we would do, we're not doing. So I don't want to continue talking, but I really want the rest of the board to give me their input, because I do know in our discussions, some of us are looking at spending the 2%, which was $600,000, plus some of us wanted to spend the other $400,000 to go up $1 million in spending. So if there's somebody that has some comments, let's hash it out now before we get the public involved. So and I know there were some that want to go to 0 and some that want to go less than 0. So here's our time to speak up. Beverly?
First of all, I'm very glad to see you all tonight, and I'm very glad to see a lot of my fellow senior citizens, because tonight I want to speak as a person in their second term as a school board member, and I really represent 3 special interest groups. The first one is senior citizens, not just at Four Seasons, but Blue Heron and across Galloway. okay? The second group that I really feel strongly I represent are special ed students and their parents. I've done a little research lately, and our new issue of the magazine we receive as board members, which is the Leader magazine, had a long article on special education we just received this week. And it's very interesting that from 2008 to 2012, special ed population in the state of New Jersey has gone up nearly 5%, while our total school population has gone down 1%. As was alluded earlier here, it's busing that is quite an amount, okay? And I did not know this, and that is, there's 4 categories of special education children that typically take more monies, okay? Now the thing is, I also didn't know till this article, is local property tax contributes 57% of that special ed budget. The New Jersey state aid contributes 34%, and federal aid is 9%, okay? So we are contributing to those students. Now, I think most of us in this room know someone, have a relative, have a grandchild that needs special help, okay? And I'm passionate about them receiving that. And I think we have to be very careful, first of all, with identifying, which we spoke about. And this article is suggesting that the state studies have recommended we have consortiums in the state where not just busing is dealt with financially, but the identification and testing of those students, etc. There are more ways to save money there. Okay, the third group that I speak as a special interest is our teachers and principals. I'm a retired educator, and I know, and especially now currently, how hard these people work and all the stress and with the park testing, etc. that they are under, and with the pension system, yada yada. Okay, but I say that to say because 2 things are also currently happening. We just had a referendum, okay, where the high schools are going to be taking with the referendum an $11 jump. They still haven't passed the budget for the consortium for the year, so we're going to have that increase. And then we put our local pre-K through 8 increase on top of that. So as a taxpayer, and one of my constituents talked to me just this week, where she is actually going to have no extra, she called it fun money, okay? Because of the increase, and she's on a mortgage, and she's 83 years old, she cannot afford perhaps to stay in her home, okay? She had figured this. Now I, who's going to be 77, I grew up during the World War II. My mother mixed red dots and oleo to have butter, okay? I grew up with thrift. I really feel this is a time for thrift as a district and as a board. 2 years ago, I voted no on the budget, and I always think, is there not better ways? Yes, there's better ways. Do I want to hurt children? Absolutely not. But I think with all the talent and with everything else, we can do a job under the current strictures that the state and the federal government's putting us. So I am frankly very much for 0%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Madeline?
My concern is when I look at some of these reductions for a building, let's say like Arthur Rand. Now I'm going to guess, I know Dave graduated from Arthur Rand. I don't know how old the building is, but it's the oldest. How old is it? 40?
There's various sections. 35 years is one section, 40 to 50 or something.
Right. It's an older building. It's the oldest of the elementary schools, and it's got a substantial number of students there. I've been to Arthur Rand, and I look at it compared to some of the other buildings, and aesthetically, it's not as nice. Okay, my personal perception. But I look at some of the cuts to Arthur Rand, especially concerning the rewiring, okay, some of the door replacements, okay, et cetera, so on. I mean, you have to maintain your schools. All right, you have to maintain the buildings, and that unfortunately costs money. So some of these cuts, as far as, you know, what it would do to a building like Arthur Rand, they're not going to get the needed upgrades that they should have. And I'm sorry, I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, and I would look at a school district, and if I moved into the Arthur Rand neighborhood, I would go to Arthur Rand School and look at it before I decided to move to Galloway. Just my 2 cents.
Good comment, thank you. Michael?
There was mention that with the reduction in number of classes, potentially the modular classrooms at Reed's would not be needed. Do we know this yet?
They potentially not be used as regular classrooms, so let's just say a third grade class. But I do know we do have some classes, for example, like New World Language is on a cart, so we may choose to repurpose it and utilize it for oral language instruction center or other special that might not be delivered in the classroom, but or the teacher might be on the cart, so they don't have their own space to deliver the instruction.
Well, we have the roofs there as an item, and not replacing a roof, putting it off, typically ends up costing more in the long run, particularly with a lot of damage inside. I know also asphalt work at many of the schools, that's another thing that if you put off the upkeep, it becomes more expensive in the long run. The door's going to cost the same whichever year you replace it. There's going to be some energy efficiency savings and stuff like that, but I'd like to see the maintenance projects that we will save if we do them now done if possible. I think the amount of cuts to come in at just 0.5% is a little bit too much to cut that.
I mean, buy now, pay now, pay later. If you prolong the maintenance, I don't want to drive down the road, okay, and hit 50 million potholes on my way to one of those elementary schools because it needs to be resurfaced. That to me is not a luxury item. Resurfacing a road is not a luxury, in my opinion. But, I understand the fiscal responsibility, but some things just need to be done.
Any other board comments? Dave, Bob? Bob?
I really think we're being physically responsible with 0.5%. I'm a senior citizen too, and I'm probably older than anybody here. My Social Security went up 1.8% last year, and we all complained, said that the government was sticking it to us. Should have up 3 or 4%. Well, if the regular costs went up 1.8, and we're only going up 0.5%, that means we're dropping 1.3. Everything costs more. And we're still going only 0.5%. Now, all you citizens, we did complain about the cost of living now that the government shafted us. It went up more than 1.8, but we're only going up 0.5%. I'm happy with 0.5%. That's number one. Number two, everybody's happy about these here charter schools. We only pay 90% of our costs to the charter school. Now, how much we're paying the charter schools this year? $800,000 for 65 kids. Is it, Tim? Something around 65? No, maybe 48.
$842,000.
48 and 17.
Off the top of my head, I don't know the current numbers.
Yeah, I think it was 48 and 17. We're paying $800,000 out to the charter schools to educate 65 to, let's say 70 kids in our district. That's a lot of money. We could fit 70 more kids in our schools. Maybe we have to put out a couple of teachers. But we sure is going to cost us $800,000. That's something the government sticks us with, that the average taxpayer doesn't realize. I'm happy with 0.5%.
Thank you, Bob. Rich, you have anything else you want to add?
Is there any way we can look into more grant money from the state and federal government in reference to, say, security purposes, stuff like that? Because I know we have to secure our schools, and there should be grant money out there that the government wants us to have secure schools, but there's state federal mandates, state federal mandate non-pay. So could we look into that? I hope we are. I believe we are. So.
Yeah, we constantly do. There's no security money that's currently available. I know Ms. Moore's here, our grant coordinator, and she's constantly looking for money. I know there's an AED in the back of the room here that was provided courtesy of Atlantic Care through a grant. We talked about the preschool expansion grant. One of the problems with that grant is it can't be used for facilities upgrades. So, while it's wonderful to expand the delivery of preschool to those students, we can't use that money to possibly fund some facilities upgrades at the Pomona preschool that, quite frankly, could be needed. So, again, the facilities money just generally isn't there at a state or a federal level.
I would just like the public to also realize that we have reached out, Dr. Giaquinto and Mr. Kelly, to our 9th District legislators about the state mandate, state not pay. And we have proposed a very nice letter to them to look into why that is necessary. Because I've been preaching for years, along with a couple other board members, state mandate, state pay, non-existent. Federal mandate, federal pay, non-existent in most cases, state and federal.
Mr. Days, if I may, the letter to which you refer, in the last, I believe, 2.5 years, fulfilling state mandates has cost the district approximately $1.5 million.
Thank you.
One of the things I'm involved in mostly is with facilities. And several years ago, we went to referendum to have several roofs done. And the voters said no. And we were told to go find another way to do it. So through hard work from people on this board, administration, we received some grant money for 2 of the roofs. And one of the roofs we were able to replace by scrimping, saving, and not raising our taxes by any significant amount of money. Prior to me getting on the board, this board was very fiscally responsible and rarely went to the taxpayers for more money. We kind of get lumped in with Great Array, and they need to increase for what they need to do, I'm not sure of. But this board typically has not went to the taxpayers for more money over the last 5 years that I paid attention to. And now we're looking at a time where most of the people in this room obviously don't want their taxes to go up. But if we do not stay on top of our facilities and keep them maintained at a level, it's going to cost us a lot of money in the very near future. And next year we could be sitting here looking for bank cap or anything we can and still having to make cuts in order to get some projects finished or done. Roof leaks, security, we talk about door replacements at every school. The school I work at right now, we have a door that is stuck. If our students were to go out that way, they would not be able to exit in case of emergency. And the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to come to this board and want to know why our children were stuck in school or somebody was injured or possibly worse. The responsibility on us is to make sure we provide the best, most safe, and educational facility that we can. And we're not asking for a lot of money. It's actually money that's needed. It's not money that we want. It's money that's needed. When we first started this process, I was looking to get fire alarms, I believe we had, and there was significant work that needed to be done at our grant. And right now, we're cutting just about everything out. And next year, we're going to have to look at it again. The year after that, construction costs are going to go up, material costs are going to go up. We're in an advantage right now because construction costs are at an all-time low because there is not very much work out there. But as time wears on, things start to change. We could be facing increases upward of 20% what we initially received estimates on. This is not going to go away. The building will continue to need attention and continue to need work. I think this board has been very responsible in doing everything they can to keep costs down. And again, the increase that we're looking at 0.5% is really not a lot of money. Most of our taxes might be affected $50, $60. In the grand scheme of things, yes, it is an increase in money, but you're talking 50 cents, a day, cup of coffee, things that we take for granted, whatever it may be. But I just want everybody here to know that this board has been challenged with some of the demands that we faced, and I believe they've done a great job. I do stand behind 0.5%. I'm a taxpayer, and I know Greater Egg's going to go up a significant amount of money, and we do need to maintain a level. But let it be known, there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done that we're putting off now, that we are going to have to pay serious attention to.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Mrs. Cordero?
I also support a 0.5% increase, and I do want to remind the board that there's been a lot of discussion about personnel and specific positions, and that is what the superintendent and the business administrator are here for. And we really need to let them do their jobs in terms of determining what's good for the students. And I would certainly encourage contacting the superintendent about those positions, but at the end of the day, it is the superintendent's decision.
Lastly, before we take it for public comment, I think I would just like to reiterate that this board, for the general public's information, I'd like to explain what bank cap is, first of all. Bank cap, so everyone knows, is the amount of money that the Board of Education was allowed to spend, but has chosen not to, and is allowed to set it aside for up to 3 years if we decided we needed to reach back and spend it for some sort of issue that the Board of Education needed to spend it for. We have $429,000 in this pot of money that we never spent that we were entitled to spend, or we were allowed to raise taxes that we didn't raise taxes for. So the public knows what bank cap was. We're not reaching into that pot of money to go spend. Okay, so that's one thing. The law says you're allowed to spend up to 2%. We're not going that far. We're going for 0.5%. And I can tell you, I'm an accountant. I've gone through these line items. I've been doing this for 15 years. I think this is probably one of the toughest budgets that I've had to sit through and analyze. I'm very comfortable. I wish I could go higher than 0.5%, but I'm giving my support for 0.5%. I think that the administration did a great job to get us there. I was at 0 originally, and they convinced me to go 0.5 because these items that we are putting in this budget are what the children need here in Galloway to keep this school district to where we are. So I am supporting 0.5%. And I understand some of my peers on this board cannot. I understand and I respect your decisions, but I am going to support 0.5%. And I think that's a fair number to ask in this administration. And with that, I will give you the ground rules. When you come up to the microphone, okay, I'm going to ask you that you state your name, that you're a Galloway resident, and that you have 5 minutes to make your point. The bylaws give you 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, I have the right to ask you to step aside so that the rest of the public may be heard. Okay? Because I know sometimes these can get a little contentious and they get a little long-winded. So again, please remember we have 5 minutes. There's a lot of people in this room that want to be heard. So with that, if there's no other board discussion, I will open up for public comments. Please come to the microphone and state your name.
Could I take 5 minutes or 2 or 3?
No, sir.
No, I can't. Could I have them come up and I'll listen?
If we can't take money from other accounts.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, 8:05, sir.
Let's start with 5. My name is John Bianchini. Can you hear me? My name is John Bianchini. I live in Four Seasons.
First of all, let me apologize. This is the first budget meeting I came to, so I wasn't here during your other meetings, and I unfortunately have a list of questions. I was also here during the time frame when you tried to explain your 2014 budget, and there was a group of people, retired people from Four Seasons and Blue Heron Pines and so on and so forth. So, one of the things, first of all, I disagree with the gentleman here on saying that your budget hasn't gone up. It has gone up considerably in the last couple of years. I looked at your slide and you said I think it was 1.2% or something like that over a period of 10 years. But I have the budget rateable in 2013 was 0.806. I just wrote down the budget rateable in 2014 was 0.840. 2015 was 1.135. That's a considerable jump in 1 year. And now 2016, you want your rateable to be 1.158. So my opinion is that your expenses for the school should have gone down 0.5% or 2%, not going up. So I'm disappointed with the increase. You also stated that you're going to, I guess, eliminate 10 teaching positions and 2 assistant teaching positions. In budgets, normally the cost mostly is from salaries. Okay, other things are smaller than that. If you're eliminating 10 positions, or actually 12, then how are you going to, where's the rest of this money going to that you're increasing your budget by 0.5%? So my concern is did you really go in and look at all the details that you could have reduced and versus spending that money if you're eliminating teacher positions? The next question I have is your budget efficiencies matrix that you showed up there. I see all the comparisons to the state average that's below, but then again, I don't see anything in any of your slides, the one I went to where the senior citizens came to, I don't see anything in any of the slides that show a comparison to the state that you're actually over. So are you saying that the Galloway School District is actually under everything you get? You're looked at in your budget lines, you're under all the state averages, or these are just the items that you listed that you're under? Are you over in some of the state averages? And these are items I would look at, and I would ask you if this for the board and for Dr. J. to look at it and say if you're over, then what can you do to reduce that? Now, one of the things I also wanted to make sure that I'm talking about reducing budget. We're senior citizens in Four Seasons. There's a lot of people that cannot afford, I can, but there's a lot of people that cannot afford these increases in taxes. And as I stated earlier, the school position, school rateable went up quite a bit compared to what it was. It went up quite a bit in 2014, so we were looking for a decrease in 2015. Now, you also say, and I'm really for child education. I put my children through school. I understand the importance of having a good school. So I'm not only looking at the budget, but I'm asking because of the situation and the times we're in, that you really look now stronger at reducing your costs instead of increasing. You mentioned about the roofs. My concern, 3 roofs all need to be replaced all at the same time. My concern was, is this a lifespan decision that, the roof was there for 10 years and everybody made a decision, well, the lifespan of the roof is 10 years? Or were these roofs actually leaking and actually have problems too? And then what would have been the effective cost to repairing those roofs instead of replacing them all? So now you're also stating in your documentation that you need carpets and you need a lot of other things. My concern is the carpet a safety issue? I mean, is there tears in the carpet and if there's issues that some child's going to get hurt? That's an important factor. Then if that's the case, change the carpet. And that's an important situation to make known to the public that, hey, this carpet has a problem with it and it needs to be replaced. We certainly don't want a child to get hurt. So there's some of the things at the town hall meeting, Dr. Chiquinta, you attended when the senator was there, and they gave you some ideas. You talked about state aid, you talked about grant funds, you talked about fulfilling state mandates. He gave you some ideas to go up to go to Trenton and see what you could do to do that. It sounded like from what you were telling me, you did that. And, okay. So you tried to get, did anything come about? Did we get anything out of this?
Not yet.
Nothing, okay. Do I have 5 minutes left? Let's see. I think that's all my notes, again, that I have. Now, I'm looking for, what else can we do to reduce the budget? I know this is late. You have 3 days that you have to put this in. I wish I had attended some of the earlier meetings or to make these points then. So I know you only have a couple of days left to submit something. But that's what the expectation is. That's what the expectation is from our community and probably a lot of other people within Galloway Township also.
Okay.
Thank you for your...
Thank you.
I'll do my best to respond, President Everett.
I will take them one at a time.
I was going to go through the list and then let someone else jump in if I don't ever. That's up to you.
Okay.
You want to start?
Sure.
In terms of how much the budget has gone up versus it should be going down, you need to realize there are expenses over which we have no control. For example, Mr. Kelly referenced healthcare costs. As you can imagine, just like when you go to the store, things cost more, materials and supplies cost more in the district as well. We believe the school district has been very responsible. As President Hubbard indicated, for quite a few years, we could go up to 2%. We could use the bank cap, and this district has not done that. In the 2 years that the district did go to that cap, it was because of the roofs. And although I may not be in order, those two things are tied.
Ma'am, on the assessment though, Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Mr. Bianchini, you referenced the rate of 80.6 cents, 84 cents, and then jumping to $1.13 or so on the tax rate. And I just want to clarify that that's the tax rate. The tax rate is calculated in this manner. We take the total taxes that need to be raised from the school budget, and we divide that by the net valuation taxable, or the taxable value of all the property in the township. And when you saw that increase from 0.84 to 1.35, that was the year of the net valuation. So that was the year that the net valuation taxable in Galloway decreased from $3.5 billion to just over $2.7 billion. So there was about a 24% decrease in the rate, in the net valuation taxable at that point. So that's what caused the increase from 84 cents up to $1.13. In that same time,
What I think I'd really like to say, sir, look at our spending.
Well, we saw a decrease in spending.
That's what we wanted to say, is that your tax rate, we have no control over. What we have control over are actual dollar spending. The $30.5 million, the $30.4 million, the $30.3 million, you see the actual dollars spent has decreased. That, okay, I think that's the point that this board is trying to make, is that the actual dollars spent has been gradually decreasing. And I think that's your point to us, decrease your spending, and that's what we're doing. The effect on the community through the tax rate on the net valuation, we can't control. What we can do is continue to spend less. And you're right, the reassessment has a value, changed that. Right, Timothy?
Yes, sir.
In terms of the roofs, you asked the question, did we just pick a year or were they leaking? The schools with roof replacements were all more than 20-year-old schools, and absolutely there were leaks. And it was only after numerous years of doing repairs that we proceeded to begin replacing the roofs. We believe it was done in a very fair manner. We believe it was done after, again, trying the patchwork, but you can only Band-Aid a roof so much where it becomes a health and safety issue, whether it's a leak in a hall with a trash can under it, whether it is a leak in a classroom that could cause air quality issues. In addition to that, the board spent a lot of time saving on the roofs, as well as for 2 of them, getting state grants to help defer the cost of those roofs. And that example is if you let those roofs go leaking too long, that does negatively impact the air quality in the building, and other environmental issues can occur that are unhealthy for the students as well as the staff. So in terms of the roofs, I think this board waited quite a long time to make those replacements. In terms of the budget matrices, they are the ones provided to us by the Department of Education. There are a lot of different comparative measures that you could do, but every year Mr. Kelly and I have to go to the county office around January, and there is a review with the county business administrator in person. That is then reviewed by the county superintendent of schools, and they are the areas that are required to be reviewed and where we get that feedback. So that slide that we have repeatedly presented is right out of information provided to us by the Department of Education. And they are all the matrices that are included in that mid-year budget review.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, your question was, are there efficiencies that were over? In every district, the state, after their budget review, sends out an analysis of those specific 7. There are no additional matrices or ratios that they look at. They look at those 7 specific ratios. And we are very proud of the fact that this district meets all 7 of those criteria. I don't know how many districts do, but I'm told we are in the extreme minority of those that are able to say that we meet all 7 of those ratios.
One of the things when I've had conversations with President Hubbard about the budget, and I'll go back to that Dr. Seuss slide about the balance. We have had people speak at several board meetings about the need for taxes to go down. And I, again, believe our board is being fiscally responsible to the point where, as I mentioned, we have concerns about some of the reductions, but they have the right legally to go to the 2% cap and to use that bank cap. And they are hearing your voices by not doing that, by not doing a 2% increase, or, we've even presented information to the board for a 1% increase. So, we need everyone to look at both sides of this. No one likes their taxes to go up, and everyone at this table is also a taxpayer, be it here in Galloway or somewhere else. But I think if you look at school districts around the county, I believe, and in the state, you will find that this board is in the minority, not having a presentation provided this evening that is about going to that cap. Because going to that 2% tax levy cap is the norm. And it is the norm because of increasing mandates, increasing expenses and decreasing revenues, and because it's allowed. And so I ask those of you that are disappointed because it's not a decrease to look at the balance, that this board is not trying to be greedy. Oh, we can go up 2%, so let's do it. They are trying to hear the concerns of those of you from certain developments that have come and spoken, or even people who haven't spoken at these board meetings. As I've mentioned, I am on an agency summit to address the economic difficulties in this county, the 50% of children in our district that are on free and reduced lunch, the thousands of people whose unemployment is about to run out during the month of March. So I'll go back to that balance piece. Where can we find that balance of being respectful to the taxpayers who either just don't like increased taxes or truly cannot afford them with the needs of this district, be they facilities issues or instructional issues. So we ask that you also see both sides of that, as our board members have done and as Mr. Kelly and I have done in working with the administrative team based on that input, both public and board.
The next question.
Do I need to follow up?
There's a gentleman behind the microphone. Again, I remind you, please state your name if you're a Galloway resident, and I will start the clock. Okay.
My name is Brian Gunn. I live on Pitney Road. I think I come from kind of three unique perspectives here tonight. I am a teacher in the district, but I'm also a taxpayer, and I'm also a parent. So I just want to speak real briefly to each of those. I'm going to start as a teacher. First, as a teacher, I'd like to thank the board for all of your support through the years. I've been here 12 years now, hard to believe. And it's an amazing district to work in. I'm really proud to work in Galloway, and I couldn't imagine going anywhere else. So I thank you for your previous support. As a teacher, I certainly see that, where we're at right now, we have a pretty lean budget as it is now. I can tell you firsthand, there's not a lot of extras out there. We're not just blowing money. And that's a big difference. Even in the 12 years I've been here, supply budgets and things like that were much more substantial before. So I believe we are running very efficiently and still keeping an effective education, which of course is the most important thing. And my big concerns are, as a teacher, that any cuts or any, certainly any increases in class size are certainly going to affect them. I know, I've gone from classes from anywhere from, 18, 19 to 28, 29. And there's a huge difference once you get to those numbers. So I certainly appreciate you keeping class size in mind. Second perspective, as a taxpayer. Last year, my personal taxes went up $1,200. That was a 20% increase. It blew us away. I mean, we're paying $7,000 in taxes for what I would consider a modest home. But what keeps us in Galloway, honestly, is the schools. Our children attend the schools here, and that's a big thing for us. 20% increase certainly did not come from this board. We know that we have to stay within this 2% cap. So while our taxes increase, we do have to keep in mind where the increases are actually coming from. There's a lot of sources that are coming from, but it's certainly not all coming from this board, even though education makes up the biggest cost. As everyone has said, putting this maintenance off is a huge concern. Things are going to cost more later, and we see those things. So I would like to see these rotations continue between maintenance and technology and facilities to make sure that we do keep our schools top-notch. And I know there's talking 0% or even a possible decrease, and my biggest concern there is, to me, 0% or decrease is basically like failing budget back when we were voting on budgets. And we know where that goes. And if next year state aid were to be cut, which we don't know if it will be, we're lucky to be flat right now. But if we face another cut like we did a few years ago, now we can only do 2% of this year's budget. So it does compound as we don't take advantage of any increase. Next year, it could be worse because we don't know what the state's going to give us. And my last thing, and I'll finish up here, as a parent, and my most important perspective in my mind, like I said, the 20% increase, we would have been out here if we went to the schools. I live around the county, I grew up in Osceola, there's nowhere else I'd rather be in the county as a parent for my kids to go here. So the teachers, the facilities, the staff, our technology, all those things, that's what set us apart. So please support those things. I know a lot of people are saying 0.5%. I would love to see at least 1% to fund some of these things that are going to cut, to go back in to make sure we do stay on top and still have the best schools around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, please come to the microphone, state your name, your Galloway resident. Take your time.
My name is Patricia Allen. I'm a resident of Four Seasons. I am not familiar with all your budgeting, but there's something that you should keep in mind. There are a great many of us who are retired. I think every one of us bears a responsibility for the education of the young. We all benefit in one way or another, but we personally put no demands on the school system, and yet we are paying at the same rate. I lived in North Jersey most of my life, excuse me, and I worked in Manhattan, so I was very aware of what was going on in New York State. Governor Pataki supported, and they put forth a program where people of our age who were not putting the demand on the school system had a lower rate. It's not that they were there scot-free, but we're paying the same rate as families with children. And it's something to keep in mind. I know you can't enact a statewide adjustment in that, But bear in mind, there are a lot of us that are on fixed incomes, and yet we put no demands on the school system. So thank you for your consideration of it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to make a comment? Before, please come to the front, state your name. When you get here, I will start the clock.
This is my third class.
I'm Bill Deutsch, Bill Deutsch from Blue Heron Pines. This is my third time doing this. But I gotta commend you for going from, the last two sessions I've been here, it was 5%, I think, Tim. And now you're down to 0.5%. But I think 0.5% of the 30, was it less than that, or? Well, tell me what it was.
Total expenditures, we were looking at a 5% increase. When we're all said and done this budget, you look at the slide, we're actually looking at a small decrease in overall expenditures.
But they were talking about a 5%, we're down to 0.5%. And in my mind, 0.5% of 30 mil is 150.
Right about there.
Even numbers. And I know how the denominators and numerators work on the tax thing too. But I think you should take a shot at the 150. That's my point. Purdy, and it's, we have you have some Four Seasons people here. We got four elements. We got the Board of Ed, K to 12. We got the high school. We got the Township, and then we also have the so-called Atlantic County people. And if you've all heard about Bill 4164, I sent you an email on this and that today and Ernie. We have got to get rid of the county somehow or other. It's just in the way of things. And I agree with Annette. We have got to go after New Jersey mandates. If you say 1.5 million for the last 2 years have impacted this budget, 1.5 million, that's simple. 150,000 is 0.5%. That's 10 times. Why are we suffering with this 1.5 million? We have got to get to Trenton. And I'm going to look at Tim and Annette and Ernie, and I'm going to go to Frank Formica, and we're going to go to Purdy, and we're going to go to Jim Keenan, and we want to march into Trenton if we have to. We have to do something dramatic in this thing. Give me my 2-minute warning.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. You started at 8:26, it's 8:28.
So the other thing I would stress is to get into Trenton. We got the two Kevins sitting in Atlantic City. They're going to put a report out on Atlantic City. I know she's going to say we don't want to follow the Atlantic City model. No, we do not want to follow the Atlantic City model, but we want to ride the shoulders of these two Kevin guys. If they're going to say something about what we should do from a statewide perspective on Atlantic City, we should ride that. And we have Brian McCartney sitting over there in the Board of Ed, or working in Atlantic City. And then we got to get with this guy Brian and say, what are you going to propose here? Is it going to be dramatic in terms of the mandates? And let's go to Trenton. So I commend you from going from 5% in the last 2 weeks down to 0.5%. I would say, versus what Beverly said, take another 150K off. You can find it somewhere. And I agree with this teacher who's here been 12 years. It's a great school system and all that, but I think Purdy and the council made it 0. We're a little disappointed with Keenan on the high school. I'm very disappointed with this Atlantic County, Danny Levinson, who tried. You fumbled a little bit on the tax thing. He says, well, the ratables went down, and therefore we have to. They're at 2.7%. You guys are already at 0.5%, so I give you credit for that. But we got to march up there fairly soon to Trenton.
I'd like to just, you are about 30 seconds from your end anyway, but our own vice president actually represents Atlantic County on the New Jersey School Boards Association, which is our trade association. And as a member of the finance committee, so she does go to Trenton once a month, okay?
We'll go with you. I'll go with you. I
It's
really
a long
will.
drive, Mr. Bush.
I don't care.
I go every month, we talk about underfunded and unfunded mandates, and
Exactly.
there's a lot of them. You know, we're not just talking one or two, there's a lot of them.
You know, yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but the Constitution in the state says if they have a mandate,
They
it
have.
has to get funded.
It does not.
We, this Christie thing, we're just getting killed, and we gotta go together in this thing. And we'll go up there with you. And I always said, don't take this wrong, Ernie, but we got a lot of people in this room. Nothing gets accomplished unless you sit down with about 3 or 4 people that have the right to do these mandates, etc. So let's get the right 2 or 3 people up there to Trenton and make some changes. But I appreciate you getting down to 0.5%. I would agree with Beverly. Let's get to 0, and I think that would go a long way. I know some in the audience would rather not get to 0.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Tilton. I'm not only here as a resident, but also as a member of the press for Galloway Township News.com. Some have already previously met me. First and most importantly, I'd like to challenge you on your 5-minute rule that you are actually not permitted by law to actually heed to a 5-minute regarding anybody who is speaking, that they have a right to speak, especially at a public hearing for any type of budget. So for the fact that you are timing or telling them that they don't have enough time and need to sit is actually inappropriate. So I'm just going to heed you on that and move on.
You may, but I do have a room full of people, so I will.
Oh, I understand that, but you cannot tell them that they do not have enough time or any time after 5 minutes.
I will discuss that with you, but please move on.
Okay, perfect. As far as the 0.5%, I believe you already found the $150,000 because it's in your rainy day sunshine fund, which is your bank cap, which is $429,000 that you can take $150,000 and move it into there to be able to take that money and bring down that 0.5%. Is there a reason why you're not itching into that bank cap this year?
Just to clarify, bank cap is not a bank account. It is
Oh,
not
I
cash.
understand.
It
I'm
doesn't
using
exist.
it.
So bank cap represents the board's ability to increase taxes over the 2% tax levy cap.
But you also are able to spend that money that you currently have banked, is that correct?
That's what I'm saying. It's called bank cap, but it's not.
How
the
much money do you have in there
isn't-
currently?
There's no money. So
You said you had $429,000, I believe,
in
present.
bank cap, right. So just to reiterate,
$429,000?
the way bank cap works, the board can increase the tax levy by $600,000. The board also has a bank cap currently of $429,000. What that represents is tax levy that the board was statutorily, legally able to increase taxes by, but did not. Because of that, when it goes into the cap bank, it's not real money. It just allows them to exceed the 2% tax levy.
Okay, what was the amount of $429,000 that was stated that you could spend but you didn't spend?
Maybe I can help out.
I'm not explaining
We're
this.
allowed to go to 2%, and whatever we don't go, whatever we stay under the 2%, we can save for another year to actually increase. So it's not real money, it's just money that we can go up to. So if this year we wanted to use 2%, we could use the money that we didn't go up to 2% last year with, so we could actually go up to maybe 3 or 3.5% this year. It's
Okay,
kind of money that
so
we're
what are you
putting-
bringing in from last year to this year?
We're not bringing anything in.
So you were
It's-
0 last year to this year?
We actually were under the 2% last year, so because, let's just, and I don't know the numbers, but let's say we could have gone to 2 and we were at 1. So we could carry over 200,000 of taxable money that we could use this year. So not only can we go to the 2%, we get to use the 1% that we didn't use last year. So we don't put that into a bank account, it's just statutorily what we
Oh, I know,
can
it's on
spend.
paper, it's dollars.
It's not on paper, it's just statutorily what we can spend.
Well, you still have to list it on paper.
No,
as
we
to what
don't.
you're doing.
Well, it's not money that we're depositing into a certain account. It's just something that we can use because we never did.
And let me add this, you can only use that bank if you go to the 2%. So this year, we're not going to the 2%. So next year when we go to set the budget, we could go to the 2% plus whatever percentage the board does not use this year.
Which I understand, but I believe it's misleading when you say you have $429,000 that you could have spent, but you didn't spend, that you can spend at a later time. It's misleading to indicate that you basically have $429,000 sitting somewhere that you could put against the tax rate to decrease it for everybody who's asking for a decrease.
Just to explain this, the term cap bank or bank cap is not a district term, that is a state term.
Oh, I understand it.
And so we're not trying, I want to make it very clear, no one here is trying to mislead
Do
anyone.
you have any surplus left from last year?
Can I finish this statement before we go to the next question? Thank you. In the past 3 years, the district did not always go to the 2%. And because of that, there was an amount of $429,000 in the past 3 years that we could have raised the taxes, but we did not. In looking to next year's budget, we have the right by law to increase the budget by 2%, which is $600 and some odd thousand, plus the $400 and some thousand that we never increased that we could have used. This board is not going to the 2%, which means they also cannot use the bank cap. But because it is not money, but the ability to increase the taxes, it's not that there's money that's sitting there that we're not using. In terms of surplus, one of the slides showed fund balance, and that amount started several years ago at 3-point-some million and is down now below 3 million. That is the amount of money that the board did not spend that it is automatically putting to tax relief as per the Department of Ed guidelines. We are allowed to keep a certain amount of surplus, for example, for an emergency, a facilities emergency. You could have a child move into the school district that needs a residential placement. And we follow all of those guidelines. But one of the things I think the board and Mr. Kelly and I are trying to emphasize is this budget could legally be raised by really $1 million more going into next year. The 2% of $600 and some thousand and the bank amount of $400 and some thousand. They are not touching that bank at all, nor are they using all the $600 and some thousand. They are looking at 150 of that $600 and some thousand.
Well, and I understand that, but I think it's better to say, although this is what you could have spent, I think everybody is looking at this is how much you can save. How much money do you have left currently in your fund balance, regardless of emergency, that you can actually filter back into this budget to give additional relief on the tax rate?
It's more than $2 million.
So you have $2 million right now in your fund balance. Now, trust me, I would never recommend you spending $2 million on a $30 million budget. But if you're at $150,000, why not move $150,000 from your surplus to bring your tax rate down to even, so that way everybody can say you have an even budget this year?
Let Mr. Kelly give you
I want to break it down the opposite way. Instead of going how much you could have spent,
Right.
why not say this is how much you have and explain why you can't move that surplus in and why you cannot give additional tax relief?
I'll start by saying, one of my slides showed that for the proposed budget for the upcoming year, we're actually proposing to spend less than we did any of the 2 preceding years, number one. Number two, fund balance that's being appropriated to this budget is just under $2.9 million, $2,899,000. That amount, part of it is what is known as excess surplus. We're required to budget it in the upcoming year's tax relief. And another piece is where we are not required. So we've used that to offset the tax levy for the upcoming year. In prior years, the amount that has been used of fund balance in each year has been a little more than $3 million. So we talked about the fact that fund balance is declining, but we still are budgeting almost $2.9 million in fund balance for the upcoming year. And just to clarify, our budget's approximately $58 million. $30 million, we're talking 30, that's the tax levy.
So is it feasible to ask 150,000 of that surplus to be moved into the actual budget, so that way it's a
Well,
zero?
we have $2.9 million
What's the increase?
in,
The half percent, what's the equation of it?
the half percent is $152,272.
So the half percent equals 152,000. Can you move 152,000 out of your surplus so that way it's a zero tax increase? That's what I'm asking. That's what everybody is basically saying, is don't raise taxes.
I
have
can
an
tell you
equal
our
budget.
auditor would not recommend that.
What's that?
Our auditor would not recommend that. Nor would the Department of Ed.
Right, but I just want to throw it out there that you have the money, so you can have a flat budget, but you ought not to use it.
Amen.
Thank you.
You know what, Mr. Kelly, I believe that we're talking apples and oranges. This is rollover fund balance. This is not statutory surplus of the 2%. I believe that they're talking about two different issues here. The 2% statutory surplus that we have.
Correct.
I believe the woman may be referring to that, taking the $150,000 from that, which we won't do. This board won't take $150,000 from the 2% statutory surplus that we have. You understand what
I believe I do now, yes.
I think that's the issue. I think we're talking apples, oranges, and pears. So that's my assessment of that. But every penny that we did not, just understand this, every penny we didn't spend last year, okay, got rolled and saved for this year to keep the taxes lower. That's what we're saying. Every penny that we spend except 2% by law has to be saved, got set, saved, and rolled over for this year to lower the taxes. I think that is the correct terminology of what we're trying to explain here, which totaled to almost $3 million. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, sir.
That answers that question. Okay. Anybody else come before this Board of Education before we vote on the preliminary one to go to the county? This is not the final. Oh, you're right, we did answer yours. But then I'm going to answer yours back. Just be aware.
Concerning the roofs, the last board meeting I attended was when you tried to explain your 2014 budget. And all that was mentioned during your 2014 budget explanation was that the roofs were 20 years old and they needed to be replaced. No mention was made that you did repairs on them, that you were trying to save them, and you were trying to do certain things that you didn't spend that money. So the information that got out to the public was that there's a 20-year lifespan on the roofs, so we decided to spend all this money to replace them. So sometimes a better explanation calms people down. So if you actually did have leaks, and you actually did repair those leaks over a period of time, and tried not to replace the roof, then I'd rather you replace the roof. If the fact was that it was in bad shape, we certainly don't want our children to get hurt. So I wanted to make that comment. When you made the comment...
If I could just respond to that, there was a lot of information put out of the roofing projects. There was information on the website, and they were discussed at numerous meetings. So sometimes what happens when someone only comes to one meeting or an occasional meeting, you honestly, no, I'm just talking in general, not about you, sir, but people do only get small pieces of information, and we work very hard with public information in our school district. And we try to do it at low cost. We don't send a lot of newsletters out because that costs money. But there's a lot on the website, and even tonight, I'm sure there are people who have been at every budget presentation that are tired of hearing Mr. Kelly and myself say the same things, but when we can, we do try to repeat information. Your point is accepted, and we will make sure when it's something as big of a project with the roof that we are more repetitive.
Especially in these times of economic conditions.
And just to mention, I see Dr. Hathaway here, and I'm sure she can assure you at Smithville Elementary School, we had multiple leaks. In my 3+ years that I've been here, We did spend a substantial amount of dollars, substantial as far as repairs, trying to repair the work and hold off the leaks until we were able to replace the roofs. And that occurred at all the buildings, at Smithville, at Roland, and at Arthur Rand as well.
I'm satisfied with replacing the roofs. So you also mentioned, when I mentioned about the tax rateable increase, and you said that your budgets were flat. I just, a comment for myself, my actual expense to the district in tax went up $780. All right, so from 2013 to 2014, I paid $780 more. So my expenses were not level. So whatever took place in the township and everything, my concern was the tax increase of $740 just for the district expenses. One more comment, child care program. You charge for the child care program. Is this something you did not charge for in the past? Or you always
No, we've always charged for the child care program.
Okay,
It's
you
an
always charge.
enterprise fund, so the child care program takes in fees that parents pay to have their kids in school after hours, and they're watched by staff members. And then those fees pay the salaries of those individuals that are.
Okay. In the last meeting I went to, that was with the representatives, a lot of retired folks were here when you tried to explain. Several people asked a question about not wanting the school system to be babysitters. That was common to about 4 or 5 people got up and spoke about that. And Dr. Jim, you commented that we don't do that here in Galloway. We don't charge our families. We have 59% or something like that. I don't know exactly the quote of people that that we have to give meals to in the afternoons and so on and so on. So we cannot charge our families here in Galloway. So I don't. What was the mix-up compared? What did I gather out?
I think you're talking about two different issues.
That's what I meant. That's what I'm
One
trying to say.
discussion was about childcare, which we have always charged parents for the childcare program. The other discussion was about activities, sports and clubs and things of that nature.
Wasn't that childcare?
That is not childcare. No, these are extracurricular activities, interscholastic sports, intramural sports, student council, environmental club, builders club, at the middle school level only. They are programs that we do not charge parents for, that some people were suggesting we do. And I will repeat my position. I believe they are an integral part of education. There is research to back that students who participate in sports and clubs, particularly at the middle and high school level, do better academically and have better attendance. So we do charge parents for childcare. We do charge parents for the Consortium for the Gifted and Talented, but we do not charge parents for extension of the school day in terms of sports and clubs here at the middle school.
Okay, so for example, if there was a soccer sport, I understand the difference. I don't think that was, again, I think there was a lot of confusion at that meeting because folks all believed that this school district was not charging for babysitting clubs.
And I think that may have come because some people bring up multiple issues, and perhaps in answering, any of us could lose track about which answer goes with which question.
I'll bring back some of
I
the
appreciate you
information
clarifying that.
to clarify to a lot of folks that asked the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I'm going to close the comment section, and I'm going to move to our resolution section then. Item number 1, our finance and accounting operations. Be it resolved to approve the proposed school district budget for the 2015-2016 school year for submission to the Executive County Superintendent of Schools as follows. General fund budget, $384,256, of which the local tax levy is to be $30,606,570, and that the total special revenue fund budget of $2,625,371, of which there is no local tax levy, and that the total debt service budget will be $1,681,786, $648, for which the local tax levy will be $859,841. Therefore, the totals for the budget for Galloway Township will be $62,691,275, for which the local tax levy shall consist of $31,466,411. Be it further resolved to acknowledge that the 2015-2016 budget, as described above, results in a general tax levy of $30,606,570 and a debt service fund tax levy of $859,841. Be it further resolved that pursuant to New Jersey Code 6A23A-7.3, budgeted travel expenses do not exceed $50,000. Pursuant to New Jersey Code 6A23A-5.2, small a, maximum dollar amounts for public relations and professional services have been established and are detailed in the appropriation section of the 2015-16 budget. May I have a motion to approve as read?
So moved.
Any more discussion? We discussed it, that's correct. I just want to make sure, no more discussion. Oh, I thought I'd be talking to me. Okay. Any public comment on the motion as read? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Carmen?
Yes.
Mr. Anico?
Yes.
Mr. Days?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mrs. Evanson?
No.
Mrs. Avery?
No.
Mrs. Cordero?
Yes.
And Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
5 yes votes, the motion passes.
The motion passes. The budget will be presented to the county executive superintendent with a 0.5% increase. Correct, not final. Thank you, Mr. Lear. Nothing else to come from the Board of Education tonight?
We have no other business, President Hubbard.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.